What's up, guys? Got a lot of support on my previous video, gained a few more subscribers. As you know, I'm one of the top performing investors that there is, pretty much, and I'm one of the most bullish AMD YouTube people. Now, one thing that I wanted to point out for you guys was that I got some complaints that my video was a lot of yapping. So I used Google Gemini to kind of break down some of the main points of why I'm extremely bullish on AMD. So my essential thesis is that, by the way, not investment advice, but my thesis is, yeah, I'm really big in AMD. Like my biggest position on my individual and on my Roth is AMD. Between 20 and 30% of my portfolio is AMD, but it's my biggest position. Here's why, okay? So, as you can see, we have AMD versus Nvidia, the AI chip showdown. So this is essentially pointing out the two dominant players, and obviously Nvidia is by and far much larger. For example, Nvidia, you know, they are a $4.5 trillion market cap versus AMD sitting at a $260 billion market cap. But look, here's how it is right now. 90% of the chip market is Nvidia, right? But AMD has grown tremendously over the years, and their technology is getting better and better. And if you look at it, the projected performance, you know, when we're looking at the upcoming, you know, the 355 and the 400 from AMD, they are really growing. Like, the next gen projected performance versus what we have currently is significantly better. And so some of the things that are pretty interesting that was left out of this right here is that actually AMD has actually increased their chip prices. For example, on the MI350, they increased their prices from 15,000 to 25,000. Now, when you're struggling in business, you might decrease the price of a product. For example, I do some sales. I help out my friends' businesses, you know, trying to sell. And whenever somebody's not necessarily interested in buying, we might put the price a little bit down lower, try to meet them where they're at, and boom, they're going to buy it. But if our product is so good that we're increasing the prices, you know, because we're selling so much of it, that's when you increase prices. So that's a huge, huge sign. All right. So just capturing 15 to 20% of the market from Nvidia would be a massive revenue and stock appreciation for AMD potentially. So, you know, you look at the market cap, you know, the Nvidia market cap, the AMD market cap, and the champion's burden, you know, the dilemma, they say, you know, being at the top, you really have to continue to be at the top. And, you know, eventually your technology might get caught up to, and then your large margins and all the dominance that you had will be put into question. And so, you know, when there's a company that's like 10 times, 15, 20 times smaller than you, and they start getting products that are at your level, it's kind of like Walmart. You know, people always, you know, make fun, oh, you got Walmart shoes, this and that, whatever. But really, like, if you can get a pair of Nikes for $200 versus $20 pair of shoes that works just fine, a lot of people are going to go with the $20 pair, and eventually that $20 pair is going to be so good, you know, maybe they're going to create their own cool brand, you know, like their own cool brand that people like, you know, and it won't be $20 anymore, to be $40. And then Nike, they might have to bring their sneakers down to $100, $60, $70, $80, whatever, to try to meet the brands that are catching up to them in terms of quality, right? All right, so look, there's many competitors too. All right, and then here's a wild card that just came out. Intel, right? AMD does x86 manufacturing. So something that I want to explain is that AMD and Intel are the main x86 competitors. Intel and AMD x86. So what does that mean? Well, check it out. They're rivals. They make x86 architecture, which is how you do server grade systems. You need an x86 system, essentially. You know, they got these main things here. All right, so Nvidia saw that and they said, we're gonna invest in Intel to help us out. And And obviously the government is invested in Intel, right? And it's kind of funny because I made an X post. Check it out. I made an X post right here, literally about Intel and how I thought that it was a good play. Don't mind my silly X posts, but look, on the 17th I posted, I thought Intel had a big potential. They've got a similar amount of assets to TSM. And then literally the next day on the 18th, I pointed out, wow, it's funny because 12 hours ago I posted and Intel's now 30% up. Now, this didn't have to do with Nvidia as much. I mean, yeah, I noticed that Trump really likes Intel from what I've seen him speak about. But really, I didn't see the Nvidia investment. It kind of came out of nowhere. But, it's pretty clear now why they're investing. And then another funny meme is the, I'm long AMD, and it's Nvidia investing $100 billion in OpenAI in order for OpenAI to buy more Nvidia chips, It's just kind of funny, a big elephant, trying to continue the cycle, I guess you could say. So here's the thing. Where do you bet? The established leader, which is the king, what people say, a safer, more established investment, but it's getting competition, or the high growth play, with the MI355, MI400 coming out. And another thing that I really want to point out that this doesn't really explain is GB200 versus MI400 chiplets. And will next gen Nvidia chip have chiplets? Check it out. All right. So you can essentially see here that there's two large chiplets, and we have 8 XCDs here. So something interesting is just like the way that we're seeing Nvidia go from like 1 die to 2 dies, and how we've really seen the multiple dies, the chiplet architecture from AMD has been a thing for a longer period of time. We'll see if they're able to keep up with the chiplet kind of designs that AMD has been using for a while. But yeah, there's a few different advantages that I believe that AMD has that really could help it go to the next level. And obviously they do x86 in-house. They have their own fabs. And AMD, yeah, they do work with other companies, of course, too, like, TSM and all the different companies. But I think that it's highly likely that AMD is going to give Nvidia a run for their money. And because of that, it's my biggest position on my portfolio. So thank you so much for watching. And this is not investment advice once again, but I think it's really critical to consider not just the winners, but the ones that might have lagged behind. I mean, you look at just AMD versus Intel, right, when it comes to their CPUs, and it's like, wow, like AMD was, for a while it was kind of, 2008 to 2017, it was pretty low down on here, and then it exploded. Whereas with Intel, they were the dominant chip manufacturing company for a while, and they kind of stagnated 2008 to 2017, but 2017 they were still up here. So yeah, I mean, that's my presentation on AMD versus Nvidia.